Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
Hey Eric, how are you, man?
Doing great. And so you've got a brand new album out.
Yeah, how about that?
Came out here in the States,
Yeah.
self-titled. Yeah. And, this is a bit different, as a founding member of the band INXS.
Yeah.
The new music is a very new direction for you.
It is, yeah. Well, how I put my album together originally, I didn't exactly start out making a new album. What I started to do was re-recording older songs. I've always been a songwriter. And with INXS, I'm very proud of my contribution with that band and
Definitely.
my friends and my brothers in the band. And how I started was I started re-recording some older demos that I had of songs.
Right.
And they might have been on a phone or just with a guitar on a piano, written some music or whatever, lyrics. And then I didn't really think about it too much. Then I started re-recording a lot of it here in Nashville and other places at home in Australia. And as I started re-recording, I realized, well, someone's got to sing this stuff. And I said, well, when I find a singer that really knows what they're doing, I'll get them to sing it.
Right.
And then one of the engineers said to me, recording engineers, why don't you sing it? And I was like, well, that's me. I said, well, go ahead. So I started singing, and they helped me a lot with that to feel confident. And after a while, I said to Marlena, my wife, does that stuff sound okay? She's like, yeah, it sounds great. And I'm like, okay, well, good. And that's how I ended up doing it.
Well, it's amazing too, because once again, with 80 million albums sold with INXS and 7 top 10 hits. I mean, you guys were all over MTV, all the awards and everything else you've gotten over the years. But I always thought of you, Andrew, as a backup vocalist, a songwriter, and obviously an incredible keyboardist. But now you've really become more of a multi-instrumentalist. And you're, with the new music that you're doing, you've got some traditional country, you've got some bluegrass, you've got some Americana, and you've got some rock.
Right.
All within one album.
Yeah, I'm mixed up,
but also many instruments too that you play.
I've always been a multi-instrumentalist, and that was because when I needed to find someone to play something when I was writing a song, they were never there. So I thought, well, I better play it then, And so I picked up a few skill sets. But then the guys in my band with INXS too, particularly Michael Hutchence, and my brothers, Tim Farriss and John Farriss, Kirk Pengilly and Gary Beers. They're all incredibly talented people, and we all learnt from each other as well. But with my album and what I'm doing now, I've kind of been spoilt because I have worked with some incredible musicians as well. But yeah, I learned to do this a long time ago.
Right. Well, especially musically, and that's what I love about the album. And I know that in Australia and around the world too, it's getting a lot of airplay.
Yeah.
And you're getting a lot of attention because, like you and I were talking about, working on this album over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And you had to hold off on the release and certainly hold off on the touring.
Right.
And you love playing to live audiences.
Well, I do, that's true. And I've been playing out, just the other day, I played out in Virginia, in Marion, and in the Appalachian sort of community with the country and bluegrass, which I'm loving that. I'm doing some more shows like that in sort of theater style settings, and I'm really having a good time with that, and the audience seems to be. And but yeah, I'm excited because I'm out doing what I love again, and I'm just glad that people want to come along, see me, and listen to the music.
Well, and it's such a far cry from what you guys did as like the mega band INXS, like we were talking about with stadium tours and everything.
Sure.
But now also, I think certainly you're such a great songwriter.
Thank you.
Is that it really showcases the songs, I think, better because it's kind of stripped down. You can hear. I mean, like the imagery that you created in this album, I think, is so great, Andrew. And it's like you bring these things to mind in the lyrics.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean the songwriting. I've tried to also work with some friends, local friends, from all different communities and internationally as well. People and work on my own. I'm getting more and more comfortable working on my own as a songwriter. I'm a little less insecure about that now. Yeah, I've been really fortunate to have worked with some incredible songwriters. And my single that I have out at the moment is called You Are My Rock, and which is the last track on my 12-track album, which is self-titled. It's called Andrew Farriss. I did that, Eric, because I got no imagination.
Well, also you got to remind them, it's like, it's Andrew Farriss, you know?
Yeah, and well, you know, and they're like, "Who's this guy?" You know, yeah, and but if vinyl collectors are interested, to look at the vinyl on my album,
Yeah,
it's animated by an incredibly talented friend of mine and my wife's, Marlena. Her name is Kiki Kiana, and she lives up there in Montana. And but the artwork on the vinyl is just something else. But the music's pretty good too.
I think the music is very good, and obviously with the singles and everything doing so well. I got to bring this up too, not to embarrass you, but you know, you had a nice little single cut by Dua Lipa.
Right. Yeah.
That kind of did well on the charts also. That you wrote the song.
Yeah. Well, I take my hat off to her. You know, because she said, well, there was 1 billion streams for that, and
For Break My Heart.
Yeah, that was incredible, and I really appreciate her, and you know, me being a sort of co-writer on that. You know, Break My Heart was incredible. Didn't break my heart.
No, not at all.
But
I mean, it's
I've had
amazing.
worse experiences than that. Yeah.
It's amazing to me, though, Andrew, it's like how you're able to transverse all these different styles of music. And I thought it was so interesting that, you know, one of the things that kind of shaped you musically as a 5-year-old was seeing the Beatles
Right.
in London on holiday.
Right. Okay. Well, that's an interesting story. My dad had been in the Royal Navy at the end of World War II, and when he took us back as little boys, our younger sister wasn't born then, but my brothers, Tim and John, my father, Dennis, wanted to go back and see my grandparents in London. And so he put us on a ship in 1964. And in those years, you didn't fly everywhere. Very few people did, I think, unless you were military. You either went by a ship,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever. And so, you know, that's what we did. We got on a ship, and for 3 weeks we sailed up through the Suez Canal and went to ports like Aden and that kind of thing. I remember holding my dad's hand, walking through the streets, and it looked like a Christmas nativity because everyone was dressed that way, you know?
Yeah.
And then but finally we get to London, and we went to a variety television show, and out walked the Beatles. And that was the first band I ever saw, and my brothers. And I looked at that and I thought, that's just incredible. This must happen to everybody, right? You know, as little kids.
Right.
And then it wasn't 2 years later, my older brother Tim and I said to Dad, did that really happen? Did we actually do that? And he said, oh yeah. And afterwards you went and talked to him. I'm like, whoa, okay. So, you know, but they changed the world of music too, you know, really.
And it changed you and your brothers because you guys ended up all playing music. You obviously gravitating towards the piano originally.
That's true.
And was the first band, the high school band, Dr. Dolphin?
Well, yeah, that was that. You've done some research. Okay, well that was actually myself and Michael and Gary Beers, and the three of us had formed this band called Dr. Dolphin. That's right.
What a great name.
Yeah, with our high school friends Neil Sandin and Kent Carney, and we had that band, and we started playing shows, and then I think my older brother Tim and Kirk from INXS had heard about Dr. Dolphin, and I think they might have got a bit jealous because my older brother said, let's play a show together like the brothers, and I went, okay. And that was actually the first show that INXS ever played, was 16th of August 1977. That same night that I think that Elvis died.
Really?
So yeah, that was the first day we played together, and I don't know if there's any meaning in that. It was just a coincidence, I suppose. But it was also my older brother's birthday that night, and so we played at a party. Yeah.
And so that ended up being the evolution into INXS.
Yeah, we didn't think it was going to go from there, but a lot of people seemed to like us playing together, and that went on and on and on. And but I've always played guitar as well. Guitar isn't a new thing to me. I used to sneak into Tim's room when we were kids, and I'd play his guitar whenever I could. But he was classically trained and I wasn't.
Ah, okay. Well, and I got to bring this up too, to where with the many albums and everything else, and certainly you've gotten producer awards also from working with other artists, which I think is amazing, Andrew.
Thank you.
Order of Australia.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing. I mean, that's a pretty select group that you are a part of.
Well, that's right, and I don't take that lightly at all. That's culturally a very significant thing to be given in Australia. I think what I found, which I didn't really see coming when that happened to me, was the emotional part of it when I was watching what other awards people were getting awarded for, including in the military category, and the stories that a lot of the military were talking about, or they would have recited by the people that were giving them the honours. And I got quite emotional, and I left afterwards, and one of the senior officials said, "How do you feel?" I said, "I feel quite emotional about it because I'm being awarded alongside people like that." Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and I think your music has meant so much to people, you know, throughout the years and throughout your career, and also the music that you've done with other artists and other bands.
Yeah.
And now, you know, with your solo career.
Right.
It's like, you know, it's kind of like you're starting all over again in a totally new direction, Andrew.
Right. Well, Marlene, my wife, keeps telling me, "You're starting all over again. You're starting all over again." Since I have that now as my mantra, I'm okay. I'm fine. You know, and that's the way it is. I have no regrets, and everything's great.
Well, and I mean, I know the reception, you know, in Australia and around the country has just been amazing to your solo music.
Yeah.
And you're making a lot of new inroads. Do you find that, you know, people are just discovering you anew, not from INXS, but it's like going, "Oh, Andrew Farriss."
Yeah, well, but like I said earlier, I'm very proud of my association with INXS. But for me, as Andrew Farriss, I've always been a songwriter, and that's something else I'm enjoying again. Is I feel like I'm back writing a soundtrack again. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm writing. I know why I'm writing again, and I feel like I'm going somewhere with it, and I hope people enjoy the journey I'm on. You know.
Well, and I think so many of the songs on the new album too could really lend themselves to TV and film. When I was listening to them, you know, I was just, you know, it's like it just sounds like they could be part of a soundtrack.
Right. Well, the visual imagery of it. Mm-hmm. Well, some of that was because I'd been actually doing some songwriting in Nashville with some very talented people, and we decided, my wife and I, to go on a holiday, and so we went down and went on a supposed to be a holiday. Turn it was, but not what we thought it was going to be. It was a horse riding adventure down along the Mexican border with where Arizona and New Mexico meet. Yeah. There's a wrangler there called Craig Lawson and his wife Tamara, and the four of us, myself, Craig, Tam, and my wife Marley, we went riding all through the national monument areas down there. And we had a horseback education, 6 hours a day, 6 days straight, on riding through areas where there were still stagecoach tracks in the ground, no rubber tire. Chiricahua Mountains. You had of course, the Mexican community south of the border, right. And then you had all the history of the U.S. cavalry and First Nations people. I would literally know the place where Geronimo surrendered. We rode up to Cochise's stronghold on the horses, got to the top, and Craig showed us how the U.S. cavalry could see, or sorry, the other way around, Cochise could see how the U.S. cavalry was riding towards him strategically because of the dust they were kicking up. Wow. And I saw it, and that's what I thought, wow, when I saw that, because suddenly I thought, this isn't a Hollywood film. This is all very real. Mm-hmm. And something about it hit me really hard. And I thought, I could do this again. So we did. We went back there again and again. Did the same sort of thing. And we went to different places. I saw abandoned silver mines and, some really sad things. You see, some pioneer cemeteries. And I kind of got to really, that's why perhaps what you're suggesting, some of my music has that cinematic feel to it. Right. Is because I really did get affected by it. And I tried to include the lyrics of that experience in my album. Yeah.
I think you accomplished it, and it's just amazing. And I want to make sure for our viewers too, with your website, with social media, with everything else you've got going, and obviously to get this great album on vinyl, where do they need to go, Andrew?
Well, after they've had a coffee and they've had something decent to eat, they probably need to head down to, Walmart or, no, seriously, andrewfarriss.com or go to Amazon or some of the digital outlets or whatever. And, look, I, appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, and also, I think at a point you're going to have your signature hat.
Right.
Which will also be available on the website and social media because it looks incredible.
Thank you, yeah. Well, I'm lucky. I get them handmade for me. So when I walk in a room, it's unlikely someone else has got one.
That makes it very unique.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, the new album, Andrew Farriss, by Andrew Farriss, be sure and check it out, add it to your playlist, get the vinyl, go see him on tour also, because you're going to love the new music. You know, no matter what kind of music you enjoy, from Americana, country, folk, you've got it all in one album.
Thanks, man.
And I'm excited to see more of the solo stuff you're going to be doing in the future.
Yeah, look, I can't help it. I keep doing it, you know.
Because you're great at it.
Thank you. And thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. Andrew Farriss, thank you so much for joining us on The Rock Interview. Be sure and catch up with him and enjoy this new album.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.